Thanks for talking to me, Sir Nicholas. Where were you born?
In Coogee, on the 15th of November 1926.
And did you grow up in Redfern?
Yes, we lived in Redfern, and my mother was rushed to hospital at Coogee, a private hospital, and by the butcher's nephew, which was opposite we lived at 95 Walker Street, Redfern, and the butcher was Jack Barber, who was a legend at that time, and his nephew was the only one who had a car, and his name was Alan Dalziel, who later finished up Doctor of its private secretary, and I saw him in later years, and he drove my mother to the hospital.
Was there not a hospital in Redfern where your mother could have gone?
No, well, I'm not sure about those days, but this was a private hospital. And I was 12 pounds, and I always recall my mother saying she's had a bloody little elephant.
Yes. Did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have two older sisters, one brother younger and one sister younger. And we all lived in Redfern. We lived in 88 Buckingham Street, Redfern, Great Buckingham Street for a long time, and then when my grandparents died we moved into 95 Walker Street.
What are your earliest memories of that area?
Well, my grandparents came out here, and my parents, I think it was about 1914, I understand, and my grandfather was an Orthodox priest, and he was the first Orthodox priest in this country. And he built the church on the corner of Walker and Redfern Street, and I think that was about 1916, if I remember correctly. Then my grandfather died, and my father, who was also qualified, he studied in Russia and theology, although he was a chemist, and he had a pharmacy shop on Broadway where Tooth's Brewery is now. And I recall very much that we've never had a meal on our own, because the home of the priest or the clergyman was always a central point for any new arrivals coming in or people coming down from the country. And the Lebanese you could count on your hands. Most of them were in the country areas, but those in the city all lived around Redfern. And the Lebanese are synonymous, I think, with Redfern.
How big would the community have been then?
I think I'd be talking in the city in hundreds, and not the thousands that there are today. And they were all very good and hard-working citizens. They'd come out to this country, and the majority of them took up hawking, with a suitcase and the clothes, and this is why you'll find that I don't think there's a country town in Australia without a Lebanese storekeeper. And there was a famous old gentleman called Stanton Mellick, who built a warehouse in Elizabeth Street, Redfern, and the warehouse is still standing, but of course Stanton died at the age of 95. I married his grandniece, that's how I know much about him. And he couldn't read or write. And I recall that he had a member of the taxation office always situated in his office to make sure he did the right thing. But he was a marvellous old man. He used to finance a lot of these people to go out hawking, and of course he benefited by that. They had to buy from him. But I remember him distinctly, and I think he died in the 50s, as I say, in his 90s. He was a marvellous old man.
What kind of a kid were you?
Cheeky, I think, like any normal kid. I think being born in the middle of the family of 5 children, I was a bit of a loner at home, but I had lots of friends from outside. I loved sport. I didn't wear shoes very much. I went to Cleveland Street School, and I had some fine schoolmates. And although we didn't get into trouble, we used to just stand on the corner and talk and race around the block and do funny things like that. But in the Redfern Empire, we used to go to the pictures there, which was, I think it became a stage club after that. It's on the corner of Cleveland Street and Walker Street now. And we used to go to the pictures up there and Des Collins was the owner of that, and he threw us out on odd occasions, and we were barred, but they were fun things. We didn't get in much trouble.
Yeah. What kind of house did you live in?
In Buckingham Street, it was a terrace house which still stands, and my brother was born in 88 Buckingham Street, Redfern. But the house on the corner of Walker and Redfern Street, which is now Housing Commission, was a lovely old home. It was a big home, and the church was behind it. And I have some very fond memories there, and the Albert View Hotel was right opposite, and we had a beautiful wall where all the boys, we used to sit there on a Saturday afternoon waiting for a fight to start in the pub, and we were never disappointed. Some very good street fighters in those days. Yeah.
That was quite a common thing to watch the fights at the pub around closing time, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, but they're all good people. At the same time, they'd all help each other. By Monday morning, they were all friends again.
So how would you describe your family?
Very close family. We still are. Both my parents are dead now. I know when we had to move from Redfern because of the Housing Commission, it upset my mother greatly, but she soon adapted to Randwick, where we had a small cottage in Randwick afterwards. But we were all, I was 21 at that time, and we were all grown up. But as I say, we were very close. And I mentioned earlier, as we didn't have a meal together, it was very hard to have much of a family life, so what we did, we enjoyed very much.
You know how you said your father was a chemist and then he was also trained as a minister, so when your grandfather died, did that mean he became the minister?
Yes.
What denomination was that?
The Orthodox. It's the Antioch Orthodox Church. The similar church is that my father built it at the other end of the corner of Cooper and Walker Street now. And my father died before it was finished being built.
Oh, really? How old was he when he died?
He was in his middle 50s when he died.
Oh, that's very young.
That was in 1951, yeah. It was rather a shock.
And who finished the church?
Well, the committee finished the church, then there was a series of priests after that they brought out now. But he was very respected in the area. I always remember the people of Redfern always raised their hat to my father as he walked down the street. And those were the days when you leave your front door open and nobody went without food, and everyone helped each other. Great days of Redfern. I'm very, very proud of Redfern. I'm a Redfern boy and I'm very proud of it.
Did your father wear a black outfit?
Yeah, well, no, he had a black suit. And I used to wear his hand-down shoes. In those days, nobody had very much money. He did, and he was a very great friend of Bill McKell. Bill McKell, who was our local member, who later became Premier of New South Wales and Governor-General of Australia. And I used to run messages for old Bill McKell, who was a legend in Redfern. Everyone just loved him. I can remember on election day, old Stanton Melick used to say to him, Billy, how much calico do you want, so they could put the signs up to vote for Billy McKell. And he was a politician everyone adored.
And why did they like him so much?
Well, he was so warm, he was so accessible. He lived in Dowling Street. And Bill was just one of the people. And I think because of this, above all politics, Bill was just a good Australian. And he died in his 90s, and it was a very sad day, and only recently.
So your father did actually serve as the minister to the local Lebanese community, or was it the Anglo people?
No, it was the Lebanese community. They had the Maronite Church and it's still there in Elizabeth Street, Redfern. And the Orthodox Church was always in Walker Street.
What sort of man was your father? How would you describe him?
An academic. Didn't like me playing sport until he read my name in the paper a couple of times, and then I happened to see him sneaking out there and having a look, and then became involved. He was very serious, very clean. He'd never touch the front gate. He'd always push it open with his foot. If he touched the front gate, he'd go and wash his hands and keep washing. He was a very popular man, my father. very tall, and my brother looks like my father, and I look like my mother, and she was cheeky and liked a lot of fun and loved parties, and I think she and I are the same mould.
And you would have a lot of people coming to your house. It was a social centre?
It was I can remember we had a cigarette machine in the house, because you get that many people coming and going. And as I say, they were good days. Nobody had very much, but what we had, there was a lot of love and affection, and this went for the whole community, be Lebanese, Aboriginal or Anglo-Saxon.
Were your parents politically involved?
No, all they knew was Bill McKell, and that's all. Nobody knew if it was Liberal, Labor or what. Bill McKell was just a good man, and Bill never forgot his roots in Redfern, and the Redfern people of those days never forgot Bill.
In your family, what sort of discipline was used?
Well, I was very naughty. I can recall I'd jump out of windows at night and sneak out with the boys and come back, and I was caught smoking at an early age. And I wasn't the saint, but at the same time I was just doing the normal naughty things that one does. But we were pretty strict, and nobody had any money, so you couldn't do much at all. There's no way would we ever break or enter into a place. Although I do recall one day I was kicked up the backside by the police, and I just started to play football and happened to play against the policeman on the next Saturday, and it was very great tackling. He later became a member of Parliament.
Who was that?
Tim Walker. He became a member for Sutherland or somewhere in the States, in the state government.
Your father would have been, much better educated than most of the locals. Is that correct?
Yes.
Like being a chemist and that, and also with his religious training, yet you weren't an affluent family.
No, my father spoke 7 languages fluently. He was an academic, and it didn't rub off on me, of course. And as I say, he was very serious and worried about people. He died helping people, and it wouldn't matter, even the locals, the Anglos would always come to Dad. I can recall he'd always go to Bill McKell, who was then Premier, and demanded that he's got to help this person or that person. No, he was very well respected, and respected by all the people.
Well, what sort of impact did the Depression have on your family?
What I remember about the Depression, we shared food. We had 2 bakeries in Redfern. There was Jones's Bakery in Walker Street, and there was Lovely's in Moorhead Street. And we as young kids used to help distribute the bread down the paddock to the people that line up, and that's what I remember mainly about the Depression, handing out bread from the back of a cart free to some of the people.
What's the paddock?
Well, it was just a vacant allotment, just down the road, down on the other side of Redfern Street in Walker Street. Halfway down the hill there was an open block there, and they used to assemble down there.
Well, your father would have had his own shop, wouldn't he, the pharmacy?
Well, he had his shop, but that was in Broadway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he didn't lose his job in the Depression or anything? He would have maintained his business?
Yeah, but there was nothing there. Nobody had any money, so he'd only be giving half free of charge.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone had any money, but they had love and affection and warmth. I think it's something we've lost today.
So you're born 26. You would have been 2 when the Depression started, really, in 28. So what can you remember of the outbreak of World War II?
Like I was at school not until the finish of the war. I can't remember very much beforehand of World War II. I remember at school, being young, what does one think of the war? I mean, we had restrictions.
Yeah, what were they?
I think you had needed permits to travel anywhere. We couldn't travel anyhow because we had no money.
Were you considered aliens, by the way,
no,
or anything like that?
No. I don't recall anyone in Redfern being considered an alien. I think there were Germans and Italians, but I don't know any in Redfern in those days who were interned. The only Italians I remember were the Voldies that had the fruit shop down on the corner of Young and Cleveland Street. But I don't know whether they were interned or not. And, then later Gino Bambagotti came and opened a bike shop, and he was a champion Italian bike rider, a big chap. And when we had the sports arena in Surrey Hills, that we used to go up to.
Can you remember when the Japanese came into the harbour? Can you remember what life was like? I believe that they had blackouts and you had air raid practices and sirens. Can you?
Well, we had those, and to be honest, it seems to be a blank to me at the moment. I do recall the submarines were in the harbour. I recall that Darwin was being bombed. I know I was about 16 and a half and I tried to join up, and I got knocked back because I had a dislocated shoulder or something, and the war was just about finished anyhow. I went over to Newtown where you sign up. I was going to forge parents' signatures and all sorts of things. I don't remember, but I remember lots of the Lebanese boys in Redfern who went to the war, got knocked about, some didn't come back.
What was the feeling or the mood in Redfern at that time? Can you, and in your home, your family?
Well, everyone was feeling for those boys away and the families that had lost, their close and loved ones. But as I say, there was so much warmth and different today. I mean, you leave your house, your door open, Mrs. So-and-so up the road's not well, and I was always made sure that some of the ladies are up there trying to help her or getting us some food. It was great. I think I was brought up in the best times of this country.
Were you expected to contribute to the family? Say by the time you got to be about 10, like I've heard stories from other people, who were in the Depression era or whatever, that they'd take billy carts and go around to factories and collect things. And was your hot water and all your heating wood, or did you have gas?
We had wood.
So where did you get it from?
We had an ice chest, which kids today would know what an ice chest was. And they used to sell wood, and like they used to sell rabbits, and the rabbitohs and clothes props. I remember they used to come round selling off the backs of the carts. No, it was mainly all wood.
And were you ever sort of expected or go around with your mates in the neighbourhood sort of scrounging and collecting bottles and doing all that?
Oh, we did all those things, and sell them. I left school at a very early age. I was just under 15 when I left school.
Well, how did you get away with that, with your father and his education?
Well, we didn't have the money to go on, I worked at Fox Movie Town News for a short time. Then the Vitoy Biscuits had a biscuit factory just round the corner in Young Street, Redfern. And I was the office boy in there, but you cooked on the oven, you did all sorts of things.
Why did you leave Movie Town?
I was sacked.
Yeah. And why was that?
Oh, I was there for 2 weeks. It was raining and I was expected to wash a car, and I was a bit stubborn and I didn't. So then so I got a job at Vitoy Biscuits. And you could eat them too.
Was your father disappointed that you weren't going on in school?
I wasn't much good at school anyhow, it was probably a blessing. I can't recall if it was or it wasn't, but actually, I was bringing some money into the family, which helped.
When you were a kid, when you were selling bottles or whatever, were you expected to give that money into the family, or was that yours?
Oh, we'd always help. We got the pictures. Funny enough, we didn't smoke very much in those days. As kids, we had the odd smoke. I was caught smoking by the belting. We were mostly interested in running and playing cricket in the street. And I didn't play football till after I left school. So, we'd kick the ball around Moore Park or Redfern Park. But no, we were having good, clean fun.
What would be like a typical meal in your family, in your household?
Well, for dinner, you wouldn't just have one dish, you might have 3 or 4 dishes. This is typical of the Lebanese family. And the meals were always big. Then they also go on diets afterwards, I think. We never went without food.
Were you able to get Lebanese flat bread?
Yes. Yeah, the bakeries, the local bakeries used to make.
They were Anglo bakeries.
Oh yeah, but they knew the Lebanese community. Everyone knew everyone else. You could just go up to the bakery shop. You know, I remember when Jones's left the bakery there, old Bill Jury was in there, and he was there as an unregistered dentist. He made the best teeth that anyone could make. He was a Lebanese guy that couldn't speak English and didn't have a licence, but used to make teeth.
Did your mother work?
No, she worked in the house. Yeah. My women didn't go to work in those days.
Can you describe a typical day of hers?
My mother?
Yeah.
My mother was very fortunate to have two very good girls. Just to do, my sisters used to help Mum a lot. My mother was spoiled.
Oh, yeah.
She was a good. She used to smoke a lot. I think this is why we had the machine in the house. Mum, no, she didn't do that. She cooked on occasions, and I also had aunts and close by. Mum was spoiled.
As a male in a Lebanese household, were you expected to do any? Did you contribute to any housework or anything, or was that the female prerogative?
Not much, but I've made up for it since.
And your father, would he have contributed in any way to housework, or
No, not really.
You know, in the evenings, like now everybody watches television. What did you do in the evenings?
See, the grandparents were a great influence on all kids, or all families in those days. And I think this is what's wrong today. You know, the family network, you know, the whole unit, the grandparents were the centre of it. And grandmother used to do a lot of things, you know, around the house. Everyone, they all lived together, grandparents and parents after a later date, you know.
How many sets of grandparents were living with you?
Only one, but they weren't living with us, they were living close by, and we used to see a lot of each other, but on odd occasions I'd go and sleep with my grandparents, and we moved into the house after my grandfather died and my father became the clergyman, because that was the church house. The radio was always great for us, you know, we had no television, and we got the pictures, and we go to the beach. I was a great one to scaling trams, you know. I can even jump off backwards, and you know, we all learnt those things.
Just hitched a ride?
Oh yeah.
What beach would you go to?
Down at Coogee, or we'd go and swim in Centennial Park, and I recall we'd be swimming there when the trams went by, we'd all jump out in the nude. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, what brought your family from Lebanon? You know, when your grandparents came in 1914, what was the motivator for them to immigrate then?
I think my grandfather was under a threat. I think he was a naughty boy in his town in Lebanon, and I think he and the patriarch had a falling out. And
on religious things?
I think so. They tell all sorts of stories, you know, the older Lebanese, and how wild my grandfather was. You know, he was a big man and big hands. He was like a Don Camillo, you know. He'd walk down from the pulpit and smack somebody if they spoke in church, and drink a bottle of whiskey. You know, he was quite a wild guy, but I think he was kicked out of Lebanon.
And what about the rest of the community? What brought them? That I'm just sort of interested in that immigration. Was it a wave then, or a small wave? You know, after the Middle East conflict, this time, you know, we've had.
Well, after World War II, lots of Lebanese started to come out. The immigration doors opened. You found that they were all looking for a new life, but as I say, he had no choice. He was sent out here, and that's how our family came out. But the next generation were all educated, you know. But then, since the war, the Lebanese war, lots of people came out from all walks of life. And, you know, I don't know how many. It could be 100,000 Lebanese here now. I don't know.
Who are your friends?
Then or now?
Yes, then.
Oh,
in Redfern, you know, I'm talking about your childhood friends.
Yeah. Oh, I can remember Pat Keane and Georgie Horscroft and Charlie Dixon, Aboriginal boy, Onslow Lester, an Aboriginal boy, Mavis Dixon, was an Aboriginal girl, and she's over in the west, and I happened to see her just recently. It was great. I had some great friends there. There was the Gaffneys, and you know, it was just a closed...
And what sort of things, what sort of families did they come? What did their parents do for a living?
Mostly all factory workers, you know. Some may have been fitters and turners, but they're mostly all factory workers. A lot worked at Steel Built in Wormels, which was round the corner, or the glassworks.
ICI?
ACI, yeah. A lot worked there.
Well, what sort of things did you do together?
As kids?
Yep.
Well, as I said earlier, we'd race around the block.
Did you have bikes?
No, nobody could afford a bike. We'd kick a ball around the park.
Would you play mostly with boys, or would you also play with girls?
It didn't matter, boys and girls. The girls would play with the boys, but we all go to the pictures together at the matinees at, as I said, at the Redfern Empire. Then the arena opened, the sports arena opened, when the bicycle was on cycling. We used to go up there. That was a big event.
Watch cycling races?
Yeah. Then later on they had boxing up there. And there were gymnasiums there. We used to go up to the gym and box.
What's boxing?
Yeah, right at that. Dick Kerr's gym up in Baptist Street it was in Redfern. And it helped a lot of us in our football days too, going up there and getting fit.
What else would they have there aside from boxing?
In the gymnasium?
Yeah.
Oh, well, nothing really. There was a club we called the Alleys Club, where we used to have a few dances, and that was in Redfern Street, Redfern, near Ferriers, the hairdresser, I recall.
Did you have much time for playing, like as children?
Yeah, well, we'd go to school, and then after school, 3:30, or 3:30 I think it was. By the time you got home it was 4 o'clock, and you might go and have something to eat, and then you go outside and you play till about 6 o'clock, and you go for dinner, and you stayed inside a lot.
You played in the streets?
Yeah. Holidays, you couldn't have much holidays, there was no money to go away, although I had an aunt that lived just outside of Windsor. Sometimes we'd go up there to the farm and spend a school holiday there.
Can you remember any adventures that you had as kids? Like, how far could you roam?
Well, we'd roam anywhere, really. Parents wouldn't know.
So where would you go?
Well, as I say, we'd go to Coogee. Coogee was a favourite spot. We'd go and watch the cricket at the cricket ground, we'd sneak in there. And, there were always ways to get in there without paying. It's funny, now that I'm chairman of the cricket ground, I sit down, I used to watch the areas where we used to sit. But there was nothing that we were deprived of, we made our own fun. Moore Park was a great park, we used that. Then we'd go down to Coronation Playground, which was in Prince Alfred Park, when the playgrounds were formed, which was a lot of activity. And where the swimming pool is in Prince Alfred Park, there was a building there, the exhibition building, we used to go roller skating, which was a lot of fun. I was knocked over by cars 3 times, and had a few injuries, running across the street trying to be smart. But,
and what sort of injuries did you sustain when you got hit by a car?
Nothing major, dislocated collarbones and scratches and bruises and things.
And what was the medical treatment like in those days?
South Sydney Hospital was great. We used to go to South Sydney Hospital.
Yeah? Was it?
Yeah. It was all right. I never ever stayed overnight, but I survived.
Were there any people that you had to avoid, or you weren't allowed to mix with?
Not really. There weren't.
I mean, even older people. Or were there any characters that were sort of undesirable, or who were treated with a bit of suspicion by the neighbours?
Well, there were guys in the area who had criminal records, but it wasn't a matter of. They always respected us as kids. They never interfered with us. We knew who the criminals were.
Well, tell us about some of those.
Oh, I think that's all past history now, those guys. There might be some still alive, I don't know.
Was there much crime? Or what sort of crime was it?
None around us. Some of them were mixed up in, sly grogging and petty thieving and all sorts of things, I suppose, in those days, but not locally.
Were there any SP bookies?
Oh yeah, all the time. You know, and I was a cockatoo for the two-up. You know, we knew where the two-up was, and you know, we'd stand on the corner and we'd whistle if the police were coming down. Oh yeah, they were great days.
I understand from talking to other people that usually the police raids were all arranged and organised.
Oh yeah, they were all part of the family.
Yes. Tell me about your school days. You went to Cleveland Street School.
I went to Cleveland Street and then went to Crown Street. Finished at Crown Street. And, Miss Harker was our kindergarten teacher. She was a strict disciplinarian. She left an imprint, I think, on me. I always remembered her. There's some good mates I had at school. A lot of us went from Cleveland Street to Crown Street, which was secondary. And you know, I used to walk with Fred Solomon. I remember each day he lived up the road, and we'd walk and we'd have competitions, and nobody could speak from here to there, and so on. He later finished up dead in New York, which was rather sad. He was in the Canadian Air Force. It's a pity I don't see many of my old schoolmates, but when I do, it's very exciting. Well, matter of fact, I saw one just several weeks ago, just purely by accident. It was great. It's always nice to. I like to go back to my old roots. I just love Redfern.
Well, any of the you said you didn't like school. Just cut. This is going to stop.
Yep.
Were there I can't remember what we're talking about. Were there many Aboriginal families in Redfern?
Yeah. There wasn't the Everleigh Street in those days that it is today, but yeah, none of them went to Cleveland Street School, and they were just great children. Nobody took any notice of your Aboriginal and Lebanese. And the only differences I used to find was if I took something different in food to school, people would look, because in those days, if you didn't have corned beef and potatoes or steak and eggs, you were different. But society's changed now. The Lebanese food, people, used to shun their nose at because, as I say, it wasn't the traditional Anglos.
Yeah. Were there enclaves in Redfern, or was the community integrated? Like, did you have all the Lebanese bunched around one area and say the Aboriginal people in another area, or were people sort of fairly well scattered and, integrated rather than sort of having ghetto's not the right word, but.
No, I think I think they're fairly scattered, but what you found was if the Lebanese arrived off a ship, they'd go there and they'd see that somebody was living there, they'd try and live because they could identify it. But no, there were no ghettos to that extent.
And were people mixing, like the Lebanese and the Aboriginal people and the Anglos, and were there Greeks and Italians? There would have been
I don't remember many Greeks and Italians. All I can remember is the Lebanese and the Anglos.
And were people, would you go to their houses? Was there mixing and coming and going from each other's houses and playing together?
Oh yeah. No, none of that problem. As I say, kids don't know black from white. We're all just kids together.
And you don't remember ever being called a wog or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I've been called all those things. Especially later in my football years, I was called a black bastard and a wog. I've been called that. But by experts, not even here, even overseas.
But as kids, did you experience that kind of thing as a child?
No, not really. No, because we were anglicised. Really, I was born in this country, and I'd be dressing the same. Although I didn't have shoes, a lot of us didn't have shoes when we go to, in the barefoot days. No.
Were you welcome in Anglo households?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think so. I don't think I was ever thrown in.
Yeah. Was there a large Aboriginal community in Redfern at that time?
Not as you experience today. No.
Got any idea of numbers?
Oh, I wouldn't. I wouldn't, because we went into Waterloo, and I don't recall any Aboriginals in Surrey Hills. I think they were all around Redfern. And I didn't know much about the Lawson Street end up there, how many were living up there in those days, because we all stuck to our end.
You know how you said you'd roam around. Was there any sort of social divisions in terms of in terms of suburbs? Like, was Redfern considered to be better or worse than, say, Waterloo or Alexandria or Surrey Hills? And were there any divisions, say, like between kids? I've heard from other interviews people talking about, you know, the Newtown kids having wars with the Redfern kids. I mean, not really serious. They're more like,
we'd play them sport. You know, it wasn't much. We used to go down to play with Bernie Purcell and the crowd down towards the Moore Park end. But no, it was just all good fun. There were no gangs. I don't recall any gangs that hunt around. There were no bashings, you know. I don't recall any bash. You know, I recall the odd street fights, and I've been on myself, but it's 1-to-1. But I don't recall gangs.
and what can you remember anything about the social status of the different sort of suburbs, or what did the Redfern mob think of the Waterloo crowd?
Well, it's not so much the social status came in when we went out of our district. You know, if you went to Bondi or if you Vaucluse or Lara or North Shore, we were all different because we never had gear. You know, I remember the Khan boys. Keith Khan now's a doctor in Wollongong, and Bobby died, and they became well educated from there. But you know, they were pretty tough boys. And Joe Corrie, who later became the professor of gynecology and obstetrics in Hobart, was an old Redfern boy. I remember Johnny Wade was a great singer. Johnny's still alive, and he lived in Moorhead Street. And we used to hold, Joe Corrie and I used to hold the hat out for him outside the pubs when he was singing, you know. There were more of that interactivity than...
It sounds like you were mostly based in Redfern, really, and that was your core.
We had no money to go anywhere, you know, unless you walked.
Yeah.
Nobody
Did you ever go
had a
into
car.
the city to say mess around the botanical gardens or
No. Moore Park or Prince Alfred Park or Redfern Park. That's where there were lots of Indians also in Elizabeth Street, Redfern. I remember. You know, they had wholesale foods and things.
Did they mix in, or were they?
I don't remember any Indian kids mixing. They were much older. I recall at that time.
What were the big events of your childhood? You know, I mean.
The day I was born.
Oh yeah, and after that.
Oh, childhood up to what age?
Oh, I don't know, 14 or 15. Well, in the year, so was Crackanite big for you? Or?
Yeah, Empire Day, it was great.
But what did you do on Empire Day?
Let off crackers. We'd all march up to Redfern Empire Theatre, which we'd sing Land of Hope and Glory and God Save the Queen.
Was this organised by the school?
Yep, we'd march up there, and then we'd have a half-day holiday. Then we might go down the park and have a run round. But holidays were always good. As I say, we couldn't afford to go away, but if you did, it was always great to go with one of your relations in the country. I can never ever recall having a holiday in a holiday resort or. I envied everyone that used to go to Nambucca Heads. It's a place I've always used to hear. Kids going to Nambucca Heads.
Local kids?
Yeah, for holidays.
And you would go to your aunt?
Yeah, because we couldn't afford to go anywhere.
Where was she at?
Gossodia, which is just out of Windsor.
She had a farm?
Yeah, I went to school there for about 3 or 4 months and I got expelled.
Why?
I don't know. I think I played up or something like that.
And you were sent to live with her for a little while?
Yeah. And I might have been there for about 6 months.
Why were you sent to live with her?
Oh, I think I'd give my parents a break, I suppose.
How old were you?
Oh, I must have been about 12, I suppose.
Had you been a bit of a rat bag at that time?
I'm always a rat bag. I haven't changed.
Were there places that you were not allowed to go as a kid? You sound like you had a pretty free sort of...
Yeah, well, I mean, we weren't allowed to go to pubs. We were, but we never wanted to, you know, in those days. I don't think anyone had a girlfriend. sex never came into it. I don't think, you know.
Did you have any sex education?
No. Still haven't.
Can you remember the circus going to Redfern?
Yeah, the circuses, that was always a big event. The show was always a big event, when the show was on, because we could walk over to the showground in those days. But the circuses were good and a lot of fun, and I say it was different. But we used to like going to the pictures and theatres. But as I say, mainly, we used to play games by running around the block,
You mentioned to me before about a women's football team.
Yeah.
What was that?
There was a New South Wales team, and there were two ladies from Redfern.
What year are we talking about?
I just can't remember, but I have seen a photograph in recent years. Eileen Matter, that was her name before she was married, and Kitty Cowan before she was married. Kitty was on the wing, and she's still a Mad South supporter, and Eileen was the hooker. And Eileen had the photograph at her 80th birthday a couple of years ago when I was there. Kitty married the Gaffneys, who were very well known and very mixed up in racing circles as well. Kitty still lives in Redfern. I think she lives in Young Street. Yeah.
So you were talking probably this women's football team, the 30s or 40s?
Oh, it'd be the 30s. It'd be the 30s.
And was South Sydney Football Club in existence then? Or was
it was great. We were all Mad South supporters and still are, I think.
Your father was?
No. The younger. My father, as I said earlier, he wasn't that interested in sport. But South's, we just loved all the South's players in those days. We'd go and watch South's play.
All the kids?
Oh, yeah.
Was there much industry in that area?
Yeah, there was a lot of industry in that area.
What?
In fact, there was engineering works, there was a glass works, Claude Neons were there, I recall Anthony Hordens were there. There was a mixture of industry.
Well, how would you if you had to physically describe Redfern, say in the 30s, the earliest, so you could probably go back to, what sort of images come to your mind?
There was a great place to live, it was very central. It was a place where nobody had any more than the next person. I find it's changed tremendously now. We didn't have housing commission buildings in those days. That brought an influx of a lot of people into a smaller area. And there's still some great homes in Redfern. Pitt Street, Redfern is still a great street, I think, with glorious homes there. I think it's more middle class now than it's ever been. The whole scene has changed around there. It became trendy. And I think, which is sad, because it forced a lot of the older people out of the area. They couldn't afford to live there. Prices kept going up and up, and people were forced out of their own homes. It was very sad.
Would you describe it as a safe neighbourhood?
Then?
Yeah.
Very safe. I recall when I was first selected to go to England with the football, and the people of Redfern gave me a farewell at the Redfern Town Hall. And they had Johnny Wade was the compere, and he had Harry Willis and Glenn Marks, and they were the group that played and sang at the Prince Edward Theatre in town, which was and they had this big function at Redfern Town Hall. I remember Johnny Wade saying, "This is a fun night, everyone leave the hardware outside." The guns and the knives were left outside, and they gave me a beautiful rug that I took away. And I always felt proud of that day.
Yeah. But it's amazing that people were carrying hardware.
Oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah. Were the Razor gangs there? I think they were in Surrey Hills.
They were virtually in Surrey Hills, yeah.
Do you know what they were?
The Razor gang? No, not really. But I think, the only people they attacked were probably people that did the wrong thing by them,
I was thinking, do you think that the times were more dangerous? I mean, in terms of well, people didn't wear seatbelts and scaling trams and industrial accidents. There wasn't the occupational health and safety stuff.
But we didn't have the number of cars on the road, any of that. I don't think that we had the long hair where people could get them caught in machines and all sorts of things. We've become more sophisticated now. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. I just think they were the great days.
You don't remember people being hurt though in, like neighbours or kids' fathers being hurt at work or...
I don't recall, but no doubt that did happen, on odd occasions. I don't recall that.
What smells can you remember?
Around Redfern? Oh, well, Harry Anthony had his local stables up the road, and we used to go in there. You smell the horseman. I used to love the smell of out of Jonesy's bakery. That was good.
Did you ever get a chance to ride the horses in the stables that were around there?
Well, you get in the sulky, or on the old dray going up. As I say, it was different. It was a great time to grow up.
Can you remember any local characters?
Oh, many. Larry Gaffney was the best street fighter I'd ever seen. Tommy Caldo was a good street fighter, and Jackie Riley. But Jakey Solomon stands out. Jakey Solomon was a son. His father had a manufacturing place there, and Jakey had no teeth in the front. He was a toilet attendant down the markets. He always wore a beanie with South Sydney colours on. And Jakey was just out to help everyone. He was just a beautiful guy. I think he used to drink about 56 schooners a day. And, he was one of the legends around Redfern.
Was he older than you?
Oh, much. Jakey died about, could have been in the last 10 years. And I recall when I was Lord Mayor, John Laws and I used to go down to the markets at 6 a.m. in the morning and sit down just to talk to Jakey. And he's just a beautiful guy. Never asked for a thing for himself, always wanted to help somebody else. And he was just a lovable character. And when his family moved out of there to Drummoyne, his brother was a solicitor, and they're all dead now. And Jakey still stayed in Redfern, worked the garbage trucks and worked the toilet attendant. He used to be the MLA, he used to refer to men's lavatory attendant.
And where did most people shop?
Well, at the corner shop, where the city mission is now on the corner there was a corner shop there. That's all. And it was always on tick, as they used to say in those days. You'd pay later, and the butcher was across the road. And, it was Harry. It was they were really great.
What sounds do you associate with Redfern, say in the 30s?
Sounds? I don't identify with any sounds.
Oh, what are some other characters? You named Jakey. What are some other characters from that area that that were just identities around Redfern in the 30s?
Well, as I said, there was those other guys I mentioned earlier.
And what made them characters?
They were tough, tough guys. You wouldn't look at them sideways. Bluey Cotter, and Billy Waters was a great street fighter, and Sammy Batson and those guys. They were all good people if you left them alone.
What can you remember about the police?
The police used to just order us away from the corner. They didn't like us loitering around the corner. And they'd accuse you of doing things which we weren't doing. We weren't doing no harm. We had nowhere to go. We'd just stand there talking. In those days, they'd give you a kick in the backside and send you on, and that was all.
What's your happiest memory?
In Redfern? I just, the people were just made me happy. As I say, I still go back to Redfern now, but it's changed, and it may sound a bit nostalgic, but I was at a funeral recently, and I went stood down the other corner and had a look and start to think of all the good old days of Redfern. The happiest is remembering some of the people there. They were just nice people, They really were.
What's your saddest memory?
I think when we had to move from there because, it was a big wrench in those days to, the Housing Commission come and knock down your place. And,
Did they put the big flats up?
yeah, and we fought, we didn't want to go. And it was a traumatic experience for a lot of those people to move away from an environment they'd all been used to, and some of them weren't young. And it was very sad.
Your most vivid memory?
Of Redfern? I don't know. Redfern Park was, I get a bit nostalgic when I pass Redfern Park. And my wife, who came down from the country, lived in Redfern when she went to school there. So we identify a lot, both she and I.
What was the most look forward time of year? What time of the year did you look forward to most as a kid?
Holidays. Holidays at holiday time, Christmas time. When we could, the boys, we could go down to the beach together or go to Centennial Park, as I said earlier, or go and run around the park. As I say, I didn't like school very much, and I wasn't much good.
Is there anything that I haven't asked that I should have? Is there any aspect that...
About Redfern?
Yeah.
I don't know, as I say, it's all from the top of my head.
Were there any great adventures that you had, or times when...
No, because as I say, we're all restricted because of lack of monies, and so an adventure was going to the pictures and something.
Did you go often to the pictures?
Well, once a week, or you go and watch South play football or something. There's not much you could do. You made your own fun, you'd be surrounded, you'd sit there by the radio. I used to hear the stories, and I think Blue Hills was still on in those days or something.
Did you play with your sisters much, or they...
Not very much, no. They had their own girlfriends.
Did they have to stay home a lot, or...?
Well, they worked, not only to stay home a lot, they weren't let out at night. And they all helped around the house. And my brother was about 6 years younger than me, so we were different, altogether, and different friends.
And did you bring kids home a lot to your family house?
Yes, many times, yeah. And even when I was in my 20s, more so, I used to bring people home.
They'd stay for meals and...
Oh yes, yeah.
A bit of an open house.
Always an open house. As I say, I don't ever recall having the front door closed.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Wife works there a lot. She's now. Here. Eileen, her married name is Shalhoub, S-H-A-L-H-O-U-B. S-H-A-L-H-O-U-B, Eileen. Now her number is 349-1020. And she and Kitty Gaffney, she was Kitty Cullen then,